On April the 7th, 2026, the United States and Iran stood mere hours away from a truly catastrophic war. The American president had publicly threatened the total destruction of Iranian civilization, backing up that threat with active military strikes on high-value targets, including nuclear power facilities. The immediate trigger for this escalation happened days earlier, when Iranian forces shot down an American F-15E Strike Eagle fighter jet, sparking a desperate rescue mission in hostile territory. But this localized military clash activated a devastating global economic weapon. In response to the escalating strikes, Iran initiated a complete naval blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. This strait is a physical sea passage wedged directly between Iran and Oman. At its tightest point, the waterway is a mere 33 kilometers wide. This chart shows the sheer volume of energy forced through this tiny bottleneck. 20% of the entire world's oil supply passes through these waters, including over half of India's total crude oil imports. When those shipments halt, a terrifying countdown begins. India holds only 9.5 days' worth of emergency oil in its strategic petroleum reserves. The world's fastest-growing major economy has essentially zero defense against a physical disruption in a single, distant waterway. The moment the naval blockade began, global markets panicked. The price of crude oil shot past $95 a barrel. This graph illustrates exactly how that global panic hits domestic wallets. Commercial LPG cylinder prices spiked overnight, while aviation turbine fuel jumped by 115%, forcing airlines to hike ticket prices immediately. Energy costs are only the first domino. The Gulf region also exports roughly 30% of the world's fertilizer, a vital supply chain completely choked off by the closed strait. When you combine the soaring cost of diesel needed for transport trucks with a 50% jump in the price of agricultural urea, the result is a massive increase in the cost to grow, harvest, and deliver everyday food items to your local market. Looking at the national balance sheet, this data compares the projected $180 billion oil import bill against India's total defense budget. The cost to keep the country fueled is more than double the cost of running the entire military. A military standoff 1,500 miles away functions as an unavoidable tax. It drains citizens' savings and heavily devalues the national currency. While ordinary citizens paid the price for the blockade, the Indian government found itself sidelined on the world stage. When the United States and Iran finally reached a temporary 2-week ceasefire agreement, it wasn't India leading the negotiations. Pakistan successfully leveraged back-channel communications to broker the deal. Meanwhile, India couldn't even secure its own vessels. Iranian Revolutionary Guard gunboats actively intercepted and fired upon Indian-flagged supertankers trying to cross the strait, forcing them to turn around. The two nations had recently partnered on massive infrastructure projects, like the Chabahar port, yet those alliances evaporated the moment the shooting started. Despite a growing diplomatic footprint, the nation lacks the physical military reach to protect its own critical supply lines when global superpowers enter conflict. A common assumption is that green energy solves this vulnerability. And to be fair, India recently hit an impressive milestone, meeting 51.5% of its electricity demand through renewable sources. But electricity only powers part of the economy. Solar panels and wind turbines cannot physically propel heavy transport trucks, massive cargo ships, or commercial airplanes. Furthermore, modern agriculture relies heavily on petrochemicals to manufacture synthetic fertilizers, a chemical requirement that renewable electricity simply cannot replicate. Generating domestic electricity is an incredible achievement, but the physical movement of goods and food production are still entirely dependent on imported crude oil. This flowchart illustrates the reality of transitioning to electric vehicles. Moving away from combustion engines right now merely trades a reliance on Middle Eastern oil for a direct dependency on Chinese lithium-ion battery manufacturing. While there is domestic hope following the discovery of 5.9 million tons of raw lithium in Jammu and Kashmir, commercial extraction from those reserves remains 8 to 10 years away. Because the economy is growing so rapidly, the absolute demand for energy is increasing faster than new renewable infrastructure can replace the old fossil fuels. This leaves the nation in a structural trap. Until the heavy transport and agricultural sectors are completely untethered from fossil fuels, the daily economic survival of every citizen remains held hostage to the Strait of Hormuz.